Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Wednesday. This is Jen and your girl, Mish. We have a very, very exciting topic to talk to you guys about today. We're going to chat with you guys about our entrepreneurial journeys and some of the valuable lessons that we learned along the way. But before we jump into that, let's talk about the really important stuff, which is obviously the wine. So this week, Michelle and I planned a little bit better, and she actually trudged all the way downtown in New York City to get the same wine that I was drinking. So thanks, Mish. Appreciate you, girl.
No grocery store wine this week. We got the real deal.
We love to see it. Okay. I'm so grateful that she was willing to do that because we are drinking wine from one of my favorite regions today. It is Liguria, which is in Italy, not to be confused with LaGuardia in New York City. But it is it's coastal and it's right next to really small fishermen's towns. So you're going to have a lot of that coastal influence. It is called Lumicina, which is the grape. I don't know if you guys can see that. I will try to do it to where you can actually see what it is. Lumicina is the grape. Liguria is the region. That region is famous for having absolutely outstanding table wine, especially of the white varietal, because obviously if you can imagine, like, white wine pairs really well with seafood, and they're really close to a lot of seafood in that region. In this specific varietal, the winemaker made a choice to actually leave some of the carbonation in the bottle. So it's slightly effervescent. It's really similar to like a Vino Verde, super refreshing. You're going to get a lot of like green apple, a little bit of honeysuckle, but really it's just the perfect wine for a hot summer day, which I don't really know what the weather's doing in New York, but it's really hot here.
It's about like 65, 70. So
okay, so you guys, but I know you guys have like a pretty hot summer, but it's definitely not like Austin levels yet.
Not like Austin. No, not yet, at least.
I've actually never been to New York in the summer, so I hear it's hot, but that's just a rumor as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Well, it does get very hot, but not as hot as Austin.
Okay, so Michelle's drinking it a little bit prematurely, but that's neither here nor there. Highly suggest that you guys check out this bottle if you have the opportunity to. We were remiss this week and we did not share the bottle prior to the podcast, but we will be in the future. I promise. We're putting a system in place. If you guys are drinking something different, we want to hear about it. Tell us what you're drinking. We love to collaborate about wine. It's like one of my favorite things ever. As I'm sure you guys can tell from like my rambling about how I love Liguria and this specific wine that we're drinking right now. But anyways, enough about the wine. Mish and I are going to be drinking it as we talk to you guys about our entrepreneurial journeys. We really encourage you guys to do the same. We're in the middle of the week. I know it's been stressful. Kick back, pour yourself a glass of wine, and let's learn about some really fun things. Also, Mish and I were talking last week and we were like, it'd be really fun if we, instead of just like jumping right into our topic for the day, which I promise is going to be riveting, we wanted to talk to you guys and start a new tradition every week where we talk about the rose and the thorn of last week. And I know it's intuitive, obviously, but just to give you guys a little bit of backdrop about what that means. The rose of the week is like the high of your week, like the part of your week that you're like, man, that made the week worth it. I had the best time doing X. And the thorn is like, what was the pain in your butt? So Mish, what was the rose and the thorn of your week last week?
Yeah, so the rose of my week is that I got a new pair of running sneakers. Actually, a birthday present from my boyfriend, 3 months late, but won't go there.
Hey, we'll forgive Chris just this one time.
We'll forgive him just this one time. It shouldn't be a constant thing every year, though.
Take notes, Chris, okay?
But I got a new pair of running sneakers, and I am very excited to run in them this upcoming weekend. I have a half marathon in Brooklyn, like I was telling you guys about last week. And I'm very excited to run since it's actually the first half marathon since like COVID. So the last race I ran, it's been like in like 2018. So I'm very excited. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then my thorn for this week. So I don't know if we have any basketball fans out there, but being a New Yorker, the Knicks lost, which I was upset about. But my boyfriend is from South Florida and he is a Miami Heat fan. So he had me on that bandwagon a few years ago. So I'm a big Jimmy Butler fan. So excited to see him play. I think their first game is actually tonight against the Celtics. So hopefully they'll championship. Yeah. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. Well, you're gonna have to tune in for me because I'm personally not a basketball gal. Don't tell Chris. But you'll have to catch us up on how that went later.
Yes. Okay. How about you? What are your rose and thorns of the week?
So my rose last week, not to get super cheesy on you guys, but it was really special. Last week was Mother's Day. My mom lives in the same town as me. She's a total baddie. I love her. She came over for Mother's Day with the rest of my family, and the wine was flowing. And my sister, music has always been like a really big thing in my family. My parents grew up in the 70s. They came of age in a time when music was fantastic. So we just grew up around really amazing music, and it was always like a staple in my childhood. So as a result, myself, my brother, and my sister are all very musically inclined. So after dinner, my sister was like, "Hey, Mom, we should like start a new tradition this year where it's like pass the stick. Like everybody gets the remote and plays on YouTube like a song that reminds us of you." So my mom like felt super celebrated. She loved it. She thought it was super special. And like on all of us ended up like dancing the entire night away and had like a huge dance party. So it was really fun. That was definitely my rose.
So special.
I know. We're definitely going to do it moving forward. It was so much fun. All those ideas that come up like that, like at the last minute, you're like, yeah, let's roll with it. So I loved it.
You're always the best.
Exactly. And then the thorn of last week was, I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to this. My husband and I had to purchase a vehicle last week, which like, by the way, pro tip, it's a terrible time to buy a vehicle, as I'm sure you're aware. But like, unfortunately, we're looking for a vehicle that is very specific. So we don't have a lot of like runway to like go a lot of different places or pick a different vehicle because we need it for like this very specific purpose. And it was just totally awful. Like everybody that we were dealing with was so bad. Every single dealership that we went to, even like car brokers that we worked with, everything ended up being horrible. So like we literally bought a car from Carvana online. And I know that's like not financial advice, so don't take it. But like we were just over it. We were done dealing with people. We felt like the deal was fair, but it was like, first of all, a total distraction, and it just like really sucked. So that was definitely my thorn from last week, but I'm glad that we put it to bed and you don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yes. I'm glad that you don't have to go through that. I know, buying a car is one of the worst experiences of my life, even though, you love after when you get to drive off a nice new car, but the process leading up to it, but it's just one of those things we have to do.
Oh, by the way, for all those who are curious, because I know you're just dying to know, we bought a used car because it was the better financial decision. So don't come at me with that wasn't smart, Jenny. Okay. So, Michelle, let's jump into our episode for today and the stuff that we want to cover. We're very, very excited about this. Michelle and I collaborated on this before. It's funny because I said, "Hey, Michelle, what are your top 5 entrepreneurial journeys or lessons that you've learned on your journey that have really helped you or that you would hope to help somebody else kind of going through the same thing?" And we put our list together independently, her and I. And when we got together to chat about it, we were like, oh, there's like a lot of crossover here.
Yeah, a lot of similarities.
So we kind of used that. We pontificated with one another, came up with a couple other ideas that were, both of us had experience with. So honestly, I think we have a lot of really amazing lessons that you guys, wherever you're at on your entrepreneurial journey, whether you're just beginning, whether you're kind of seasoned and you've been doing this for a little while, it doesn't hurt to serve as a reminder. But one of the things that we wanted to invite you guys to do is if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to become one, we would love to hear from you about some of the lessons that you guys have learned, what your perspective is. like this is a community that we want to create and cultivate with everyone. And one of the keys to live by for me is experience is the only thing that's better secondhand, outside of used cars. So we can all learn from each other, and we can all put ourselves in a position where we're not having to take every single lesson on the chin every single time. It doesn't have to be that way. I think I mentioned last time we live in the information age. So like, let's collaborate together and let's help each other, because there is enough success out there for everyone. All right, Mish, kick us off with your first entrepreneurial lesson.
And just adding in there, I think one really cool thing that I think we could all do is, like Jenny was saying, if you're in the audience, in the comment box, just leave maybe like your greatest lesson so far on your journey through entrepreneurship. I think after we go through ours, we'll run through yours and talk about them as well. Okay. So the first one that we have here for you is that age is just a number. And I'll go over kind of my take on that. But Jenny, I don't know about you, but I just feel like there is such a stigma in like our world, just being, you know, setting the standards at which you should have something done, especially being females. I know I struggled with that a lot when I was younger, thinking, oh, you know, by 30, I'm going to be in my perfect career. I'm going to have 2-3 kids. I'm going to be married. I'm going to be all set. And it's okay if it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And this was actually my second career, kind of, and I came into it late. So I was 28 when I started. And that really got into my head, thinking, am I too old to do this? You know, am I too old to be taking on a second career? What if I don't make it? What if I'm not doing it fast enough? So no, this was one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And like you said, age is just a number. You know, there's really no timeline on when you have to have things done by. A lot of females now, you know, 40, 50, 60, starting their own companies, having children later in life. So it's, you know, just go by you and what works for you.
That's so funny that you say, like, I started my second career later in life and it's 28. And that is just, Michelle and I are the same age. So it's just a product of how we grew up, right? We are persistently and constantly being told that you have to have X or do X, Y, Z, you know, prior to a certain age. And, you know, sorry for cussing. I know we shouldn't be doing that, but timelines are bullshit. Like, genuinely, like they are. Like, there is no timeline for you to get accomplished what you should be getting accomplished. And to kind of piggyback off of what you said, I kind of had a little bit of the opposite end of the spectrum. I started in my career immediately out of law school. So I was always the youngest person in the room. I'm also in finance. So I was one of the only women in the room pretty much at all times. So super male dominated field. And I remember when I was young, I had really bad imposter syndrome. I was like, what am I doing in here? I feel like I'm constantly having to prove myself. I'd be in boardrooms with C-level executives, and they would be asking me questions like, when did you graduate high school? And it's like, everybody knows that that's just a quick way to do math to find out how old you are. And I just, you know, I would like kind of flub around. I didn't really know how to handle it. And it was just, it wasn't good, right? It took me a while to kind of come into my own. And I don't feel like I had a lot of people who were telling me what we're telling you now, which is you can do anything in your own time. It doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is how you're presenting yourself and the knowledge that you have to move people forward. And that can be attained at any age, right? It's just hard work. The 10,000 hour rule applies to anything. I know there's so many examples of women specifically who are doing things on a later timeline. Some of my favorite people that I kind of looked to when I was starting my entrepreneurial journey, Sarah Blakely. Like, if y'all don't know who Sarah Blakely is, give her a follow on Instagram. Definitely read about her story. She is the founder of Spanx, and she literally started it like on a poster board going door to door. Like, she is literally such an inspiration. She didn't meet her husband until she was 35. She became Forbes' youngest billionaire under 40. And now she's got I think she's got 5 kids or something. It's insane.
Mhm.
Basically, she said, screw the timeline. I'm going to do it. She said, I'm going to build my empire and build my business and the family will come. And that's exactly what happened. And I follow her on Instagram and she looks I know Instagram is a highlight reel, but it is easy to see who's being authentic. And I can tell that she is authentically being herself around her family. She's one example. Another example, I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me on this, but I think Vera Wang didn't start her company until she was 40 or 50. And literally she is one of the most sought after wedding dress designers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a minute, 40 or 50. And we're out here worried about, oh my God, I'm 28 and I'm too old to start something. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's literally never too late, right?
No, it's not. Maybe that's one of the secrets to Vera Wang's beauty. So I don't know if you've seen her recently, but there's not a flaw in her. And I hope I look like her at that age.
It's because she's so happy, right? She's just
exactly,
she's living her truth. She's doing what makes her happy. She's impacting people's lives. That is what we're here for. We don't need a timeline. We can do it in our own time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next entrepreneurial lesson is one that is really, really, really near and dear to my heart. And it's hard to put a label on it, but essentially what Michelle and I were talking about is it's okay to fail as often as you can. It's a setup, not a setback. One of my favorite books of all time, if you guys are readers, I suggest being a reader. I'm a voracious reader, and I feel like that really gives me a lot of insight to apply. One of my favorite books of all time is called Failing Forward by John Maxwell. And in that book, he really frames failing a lot differently than I ever saw it framed in my entire life growing up. I always thought avoid, avoid, avoid. When it comes to being an entrepreneur, you want to fail as much as you can, because every time you fail, you're closer to your next success and your next conquest. For me, I'll share a very short story with you guys I'm so glad I'm on the other side of now, because it's literally, this defined me for so long in my life. When I played softball, like I talked about last time, and then I went to law school, and then I graduated from law school early, and I sat for the bar exam, quite frankly, before I was ready to. I moved from Oklahoma to Texas. So I was learning Texas law that I'd never been exposed to in my entire life. I was studying a truncated timeline of 2.5 months as opposed to 3. And I failed the bar exam by 1 point. And and I remember, those moments in your life where you just you feel like there's music playing in the background and it's I don't know, a trailer for some horror movie.
Yeah.
And I was working as a consultant because I wasn't yet licensed, and it was subject to me becoming licensed. I was in Houston. I went to the parking garage to upload my bar exam results. And then it said I failed. And I was like, you guys, I thought my life was over. I went home from work. And then I spent the entire weekend wallowing in my self-pity, thinking that my entire life had been a waste. I felt like I'd failed on the biggest stage. I felt like it was the biggest deal. I had no coping mechanism to know that this is not the end of the world. In fact, you can just sign up for the bar exam again and retake it. Which is ultimately what I ended up doing. But it just took me, and that was one of many failures. I failed so many times since then. I can't even count on 2 hands the amount of times I've failed since then. But now I understand that those failures are there to teach you something. You are success is not linear. You are not climbing an echelon that's going to continue to go up, 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 up. So I would have loved to have had somebody tell me prior to me reading that book that it was okay to fail. And I think that's something that's so important to keep in the back of your brain when you're embarking on an entrepreneurial journey, or just in life in general, no matter what your walk of life is. I don't know what your experience is with it, Michelle, but I'm assuming that you had some similar preconceived notions in your brain.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. I just remember the first 3 years starting out in my career, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride, and I just remember sometimes I would just hit rock bottom and think, what am I doing? Is this really for me? just failing. But what I really learned to do was just turn to my positive mindset and just know, you know what, I got this. Even if I'm failing, I know that I could dig myself out of this and get through it and come out better on the other side. I think one of the quotes I love most is, when you fail, you are starting from experience now. So now, you know what happened, what you did wrong. Now you could go and make those changes. Then you usually succeed afterward. One story that I have is that I remember sitting in one of my manager's office when I first started out, and him sitting me down and saying, well, your dials aren't like up to par, or you're not hitting the right numbers. And I remember I left his office and just started crying. And I was just like, oh man, like, what am I going to do? And I could have been like, that's it. You know what? I quit. But I took that time to learn from it. And like I said, I just came out, better on that end of that. And I think definitely, when you're starting out in any business or even in any career, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And you're going to, there's hardly not many people that I've spoken to thus far that have told me, you know what, I succeeded within a year. I started making millions. Like everybody I talked to, it took them a few years and they hit a lot of rock bottoms, but they came out better than before.
Oh yeah, you're going to take it on the chin a few times, guys, but resilience is, and I don't want everyone to think that you have to just be like a resilient human by nature and that you just have to have that already ingrained in you as a character trait. It's something that can be learned. You just have to remind yourself of these lessons and realize that not everything is the end all be all. Not every setback is going to set you back as many steps as you think it is. As long as you keep trucking away and propelling yourself forward, you're going to succeed. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. For lesson number 3, came up with believe in yourself. And this is one of my favorites. I always think, if I can't believe in myself, who else is going to believe in me? I think that's one, kind of phrase too that relates to confidence and being confident. When you're confident about what you're doing, what you're speaking about, a lot of people are going to look up to you, want to talk to you, and want to get your advice on that end. So I love, like just that topic of believing in yourself. And I didn't always, believe in myself. I had to kind of do a lot of like work in getting myself to that point on that.
Absolutely. I mean, like to piggyback off of what Michelle's doing or saying, like, but it's the same for me, right? Like it took me way too long to develop confidence in myself. And I used to give myself a fair amount of shame about that, which is ridiculous, right? Because everything is a learning opportunity. It just took me longer than I wanted to take other people. But if you don't bet on yourself, who will, right? You have to bet on yourself. You have to be your number one advocate. You have to be your best friend. You have to be a little bit entertained by yourself every now and again. Mm-hmm. And I think, one of the things that I think about often is that one of the things that life is going to guarantee you is a fair amount of stress, right? You're always going to have stress, whether you're an employee, whether you work in a traditional career sense, whether you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a certain amount of stress in your life. And for me, one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur is I know that my success is up to me. If things aren't working, it's up to me. If things are working, it's up to me to continue. So I would bet on myself 1,000 times over before I would ever count on somebody else to maintain and secure my livelihood. And that's a personal choice. Not everybody is an entrepreneur, but I remind myself of that whenever I start to waver and have self-doubt, because self-doubt's normal for everyone. But you have to remind yourself of these things. You're betting on yourself. And that's a lesson that is paramount for people. So I know one of kind of like segueing, one of the lessons that's really big for me, and one of the things that I really like to keep in terms of a tenet for, my journey is networking and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. And it's funny, I think Chris mentioned in the chat here that you can't do everything and know everyone yourself. Everything yourself. Absolutely correct. You have to surround yourself with a professional network. And it's funny because one of the things that I learned, I guess you would say kind of late in my journey of networking with people, is when you're networking, at least initially, it's really easy to feel like you're talking to that person to gain something from them. Yeah. Or to get a quote unquote referral. Mm-hmm. And that is the complete wrong mindset. My mentor actually taught me that. Like, you cannot be myopic like that. When you're meeting people, you should be meeting them with the aim of how can I help you? Mm-hmm. Because I guarantee you, when you lead with that and you have that mindset, everything will fall into place in terms of your business and your connective tissue and your ability to be introduced to the people that you need to be introduced to. But when you meet these people that you're being introduced to, you need to have a network surrounding you that you can connect them to. You never know what somebody is going to ask you for. And an entrepreneurial community is something that's really small, right? You want to help other people along the way. It can't just be solely about yourself. And not to mention, from a selfish perspective, people can smell that on you. Oh, yeah. People genuinely can smell that on you, and they're not going to want to help you. Having a solid network is the rocket fuel that you need to propel yourself and your business forward. I cannot express enough to you how important that is. And I know Michelle and I have really, really similar insights on this because her and I build our business really similarly in terms of meeting as many people as we possibly can. I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on networking and how important it is to you.
Yeah, so totally agree with Jenny. I think, network as much as possible and go into it with the mindset, not that you're going to get something out of it, but how you could add value or what you're going to learn from that person. So necessarily, you might not get a referral or introduction from someone, but what they might teach you, they might share their lessons with you. I think that, is great onto itself. And then another aspect of this, I think it's that, well, I'll just bring out a quote. I'm bringing out a lot of quotes here today.
We love quotes. Bring all the quotes out.
We love quotes. But it's actually funny because I feel like every point that we came to today, I had a quote for it. And I was like, oh, I love this. But you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most of your time with. I said that correctly.
You did.
Okay, perfect. So make sure that you are surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals or who are going to, build you up and have a positive mindset. You don't want to surround yourself with negativity or, drama. You really want to make sure you have a solid foundation of people in your life.
Agreed. It truly takes a village, you guys. Community is literally everything when it comes to this kind of thing. Okay, Michelle, What is lesson number 5?
Another one I love. So, I've been saying that for everyone, but I love, all of these. But say consistency or hold on. Sorry.
It's okay.
We have here. So consistency is everything. So if you're not filling your pipeline, you're struggling. That's one way to look at it. But my take on this, I'll pull out another quote. But an object in motion stays in motion. Mm-hmm. And I know one of my biggest things throughout my career and what has helped me get this far is consistency and a routine. I know if I am out of my routine, even for a day, I just feel my whole world is upside down. And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? And I don't necessarily end up having a bad day, but I feel like I am. And that impacts my mood, how I work throughout the day. That's one thing. And then so in terms of entrepreneurship, the consistency, so just doing things daily, setting yourself up for success. So I know in my world, when I started out, I would have days set up for prospecting. So I remember every Monday and Wednesday were my prospecting days. Every Tuesday, Thursday were my call days. Every Saturday was an event. And I stuck to that, week by week by week. And I think that's how I built my practice and became so successful.
Literally, Michelle is one of the most disciplined people I know. So take a page from her book. It's funny. I am obsessed with Mel Robbins, and she talks about habit stacking. And if you're struggling and you feel out of sorts and you feel like you just cannot get into a routine, I highly recommend that you do a quick search, a little bit of a deep dive into habit stacking and how effective that can be. It kind of leans into, you can't really do everything all at once. So pick a habit, get consistent at it, and then stack another habit right on top of it. That has been massive for me to make sure, because sometimes when you start to get busy, it can start to feel like your day's running you. And if you consistently stick to your habits, you're not going to run into that, right? Because you already have the outline of what your day is going to look like and what you need to get accomplished. And you can build upon the system that you've created for yourself rather than getting complacent and just essentially reacting to everything, which is so easy to happen in my business, and something that I'm super mindful to make sure that I'm not that way. Because first of all, you're not happy. Second of all, you can't serve your clients that way, because if something comes up, you're not going to be ready for it. You're not going to be proactively ready. So that is something that is super massive to me. Consistency across all platforms is huge in any journey that you're taking, whether it's weight loss, whether it's I want to eat better, whether it's I want to build my business, I want to work towards any goal, you have to be consistent. We'll get into the next lesson, which is one that I'll be very candid with you guys. I still struggle with this, okay? I have been making concerted efforts as of late to make this a priority and make sure it stays top of mind. I actually invested in an entrepreneurial program called Strategic Coach that really promulgates this across the board and talks about it all the time. So I'm really, really making an effort and a big push for this year, which is the how does not matter. Find a who. Sometimes it really feels like we have to do everything, especially like Michelle and I were type A, right? So we feel like we have to do everything. And end of the day, like you physically cannot do everything at a high level. And you're wasting valuable time doing things that you can accomplish when you're doing that. If you take time to sit down and put things in your life into quadrants in terms of what brings you joy, what you're good at, and what you should outsource, it will change your life. I genuinely mean that. I am starting very small because I'm a bit of a control freak, but I have made concerted efforts over the past couple of weeks to do this. And it has been such a game changer to my productivity, to me being more present with my clients, being more present with my husband, you name it. Like this is so imperative. And I know in the early stages, it feels like you can't, but you really can. Like really put some thought into it. There are things you can outsource. You cannot do everything. You can lean in and tap into your network. I'm super passionate about this. If you guys want to go on a journey, I'm still here learning with you. I'm doing it every day to try and get better and better. What about you, Michelle?
And the same exact thoughts. So as Jenny mentioned, we're both type A personalities. And like I said, I still am struggling with this myself. So I can be, sort of a perfectionist and want to oversee everything. So I know that it's getting done correctly. I think that's one of my biggest weaknesses. Is that I know, some people going to go back and forth, whether that's, weakness or a strength. I think it can be a weakness for me sometimes just because I focus on things too much. And when I started to learn how to delegate things to other people, I saw a tremendous shift in my growth. Because now when I'm delegating to people, I know that I shouldn't be focusing on those things, but I start focusing on things that I know that are going to help me grow my business and sticking to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So imperative, you guys. You guys come on that journey with us and we will periodically update you as to how it's going. Next one, Michelle, I'm totally circumventing you because I want you to talk about this because you are the financial maven / guru. This is a lesson I've taken on the head. I'll go after you, but let me just introduce it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep more cash in reserve than you think you need because success is not linear. It's just not. All right, Michelle, what are your thoughts on this?
Nope, it's not. Okay. So definitely when you are starting out your business, you want to, going into it, you want to make sure that you do have some cash in reserve. As like Jenny was saying, success is not linear. And over those few years, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. you're going to go up and down, up and down. So you want to make sure that you have a cushion safe for you. So when you hit those low points, you're not making much income, you have something to kind of draw from. And also within the first few years of starting your business, I think something that I know that I did, but whatever I was making from it, I wanted to invest back into my business. And that really, started to also help my business grow.
Yeah.
And, I'm curious for you too, how were your first few years? Did you experience the same things?
Well, it's funny because I had a little bit of beginner's luck in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And then I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I got a little complacent. Like I was like, oh, this is great. The money's good. I have autonomy. I really like this. So I'm going to lean into this. And I got a little too complacent. So I learned the lesson the hard way that just because something is good today doesn't mean it's good tomorrow. So my advice to you is to really put yourself in a position to think about the money that you need in reserve and then stretch that further, like a little bit further, right? Because you cannot predict everything. And that's one of the risks of being an entrepreneur. Like you do not have a steady paycheck. You eat what you kill. What you bring in is what you have for your family. And so I am very, very cognizant of that now. I learned the lesson. I have a system now where I'm definitely feeding into that and making sure that I can account. I mean, my business is cyclical. I have to account for slower seasons. So that makes me a lot better at managing my money from that perspective. And I know Michelle. So it's just honestly something that you really need to keep at the forefront of your brain. You really need to make sure that you're accounting for that and planning for that. Emergency funds for somebody who has a job are different than an emergency fund for someone who owns their own business. So make sure you make that distinction in your brain.
Definitely. And I'll leave you guys off with a quote for this one.
We love quotes.
Yes. The quote queen, but for like success is not linear. And I always try to remember and remind myself that, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So, and also when I'm running, I think about that too, just getting through that journey. And it's, you're not going to get there right away. It's going to take time. Just make sure, like Jenny was saying, you're budgeting, you have some cash on hand for that.
I love it. We're going to call Michelle the quote queen.
The quote queen. I'll come with a different quote for you guys every week.
Love it. We're going to hold her to it.
Okay. Our next one. So this is leave number 8 for you guys, but knowledge is not power and activated knowledge is. So, reading 10,000 books doesn't move your business forward. It's actually what you do with that knowledge. I know I've heard people say, oh, I've read so many books, but it's really, what are you taking out of those books and are you actually putting that into practice?
Yeah, it's funny. So I feel like this is like the episode of Confessions where I tell you guys really embarrassing things that I used to do. But when I started my business, I would read all those quotes that I'm sure all of you have read that says like CEOs read a total of 350 books a year. And like, if you're a CEO or a boss, like you need to be reading, etc. And I know I made a joke earlier about how I'm a voracious reader, and I am. When I first started my business, you guys, I had a book, like a notebook, where I wrote down every single book that I read in the year so that I could be like, look, Ginny, you read so many books. So embarrassing. Like I literally tracked it. Like for what? Like who is that serving? Stupid. But I say all that to say, if you're an analytical person like I am, you can get analysis paralysis. And writing down the amount of books you read and sitting down and reading as opposed to going out and messing things up so that you have to fix them later, which is what I ultimately ended up doing, is not going to get you anywhere. Like, yes, you need a foundation. Yes, you should read. You don't need to be reading to a point where you're not doing anything with it. I can't express this enough. All of these ideas that you have floating around in your head as a result of the books that you've read and the knowledge that you've experienced secondhand mean nothing if you're not going to do anything with it. So I cannot express to you guys enough how important it is to make sure that you are actually putting the things you read into practice.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember reading a book actually pretty recently, and they were talking about programming your brain. basically saying, it's not really just reading something, just you have to start like activating that, doing it over and over so that it's built into the subconscious and you're actively living through it each day. Just reading it isn't going to do anything for you.
I love it.
Putting things into action.
Okay, lesson number 9, you guys. This is something that I also struggled with. Creativity and inspiration comes in waves. Embrace this and do not try to force it, you guys. Do not try to force it. I am a very right brain person. I'm a very analytical person. I'm type A. I used to tell everybody I knew that I wasn't creative. I want to debunk that for you guys. Everybody's creative. Everybody has a creative outlet. I have learned that about myself recently and started to really love that. What I also have learned is, I'm creative. That means I can be creative. No, you can only be creative when your brain is allowing you to be creative. And when your brain is not allowing you to be creative, you need to put that away and go do other things. And that's something that ultimately frustrates me a lot, but I have to lean into it because if you force it, it's not creative, it's not authentic, and it's not what you're trying to convey.
Exactly. Yeah. I experience those days too. When I want to be creative, just my brain's like, you know what? No, I can't. So I embrace it now. And, I just stop and say, okay, today's not the day, and take a break from it and actually come back. And I feel like that helps me a lot more.
I love it. Okay, let's jump into number 10.
Number 10. So invest in your business early and often, especially when you feel it may be premature. This also ties back a little bit about what you're talking about, how keeping cash in reserve. I think I might have touched upon it, how, especially within the early years, you're in, putting what you make back into your business. I think too, that helped me also grow within the first few years of over time of doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, we won't belabor this one because I think there's a lot of themes that cross over, but honestly, you need to make sure that you're putting in money into your business. You need to make other things in your life wait for it, because whatever you put into your business, you're going to get back tenfold. So even when you think you can't do it, promise you can. We are going to get to the lesson that is literally, it's a part of my philosophy. It's who I am. It's why I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think a lot of people admit this. Of course I want to help people. That is a huge core value for me. But I don't think a lot of people admit that they're an entrepreneur because they really like fun and they really like to do things on their own terms. And fun needs to be comprised in their life daily. Maybe not at the level that you're experiencing it when you're on vacation, but I cannot tell you how important it is to prioritize fun. One of the things that I learned early was, okay, when I can make my own hours, I can have a lot more autonomy to do things that I love. So if I want to go on a really long walk in the middle of the day, I can do that now because I'm going to make it up on the back end. Do I do that every day? No. But I will tell you that I realized maybe a year or two, it took me a while because I used to have guilt about it. It took me a while, but I realized after about a year or two of really prioritizing fun and doing things that brought me joy in the moment as often as I possibly could is actually what was sparking the creativity in my business. And also it made me a more interesting human, which made me more engaging when I was talking to people who could potentially be introductions for me or who could connect with me and I could help them. So just because you are an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you need to go have this whole grind set where you're not a human anymore. People want to work with you because of who you are. So make sure that if you're a fun person and you want to do things that are fun, you're still doing things that are fun when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I could not agree more. So I know, I sometimes get into the habit of thinking, oh, well, I have to work 7 days a week. And if I don't, then I'm not making progress. I did do that starting out, but also taught myself, no, Michelle, you can't do that. You need to have, at least one day, because if not, just burn out. And when you're burnt out, you can't work to your full capacity. So a little thing that I actually do is I try to book a trip every few months. And I know that I am looking forward to something. And actually after that trip, I feel my most motivated. It makes me actually want to get back to work and work harder.
I love it. Okay, guys, I think we are at the
Okay.
very end of
Yes.
our podcast today.
We
So we
are.
don't want to get cut off. We so appreciate you guys. We have more lessons. We'll probably piggyback them on the next one. We will get out the bottle of wine before next week, I promise. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and keep following us along on our journey. We're very, very excited that you're with us. And everybody go out there, have fun, and follow your curiosity.
Yes. Good evening, guys.